lights in the trees, a trick of the frost, a ghost on the breeze. But I saw a mirror older than me, staring through time like it wanted to speak. The forest went silent, the world held its breath. Something was watching beyond life and death. We stepped through the green, boots breaking the seal, not chasing a light, but something too real. I came back with salt on my skin, my mind split wide where the storm got in. They call it a test, but I know the deal. History blinks beneath the green veil.
And good evening, everyone. I hope you're all having a great weekend, and welcome to our review show. We're going to be reviewing Chapter 9, The Double Self, and previewing Chapter 10, The Echo Reawakens. Gentlemen, how are you guys doing tonight?
I'm doing great. What did we say before, John?
Peachy,
double peachy.
peachy, yeah. I had a peachy, what do they call? They shots, schnapps. You ever had drink schnapps?
Well,
No, I haven't been drinking it yet.
I'm just glad that you recovered after your procedure last week.
Yeah, it was a long week last week. Going for a procedure and spent 3 days afterwards in the hospital.
Oh my gosh! And I was at a Rush tribute concert. That's why we did not do our live show last week, the review show. But we're back tonight, and we're going to be talking about the Double Self first. So, Chris, I'm going to start with you right off the get-go. What was your take on Chapter 9, The Double Self, where he...
Well, the very first thing that comes right to mind is, and it's right in the beginning of the show, is how the U.S. government was taking this anomaly, I'm going to call it an anomaly, and wanted to weaponize it. Which is
Are you surprised, though? I mean...
No, I'm not really surprised, but I mean, they didn't really understand it, and then somebody goes, well, we don't understand it really well, but let's try to weaponize it. So I was like thinking, maybe you ought to understand it first before you try to weaponize it, before you blow yourselves up or disappear into a vortex like John did and all this other crazy stuff. So it just kind of was like, this was kind of amusing. It was kind of funny at first because I'm like, well, first thing out of their mouth, let's weaponize it. But we don't understand it. It's kind of talking to us in a frequency, but we're not really sure what it wants or what it's doing. They got some dumbass people in the Pentagon.
John, what are the parallels between what we're seeing here on the Green Veil as these chapters progress and your actual experience at Rendlesham, the events that happened there with the individuals involved? Are we looking at correlation parallels? What's going on in the Green Veil, on how the process of when they interrogated you guys, took your statements? Did they have any procedures that you can't recall that they did to any of you?
Well, the majority of people that were involved claimed they were brought in and interrogated. I don't have that memory. I've always, real time, real world, my direct involvement. I don't remember any of what they claimed happened. So the way the story was written was most people that were there that I was close to, including Sergeant B, claimed they saw me there. They saw me get taken in. They saw this stuff go on. Colonel Deming, which was Colonel Hall, has been back and forth. He's been all over the yard about all this stuff, but ultimately he has said at one point that he can't. That's where he gets really in the gray area. Some way he acts like he kind of knew we were, and then other times he just says he was told we were. But most people believe something happened to us. So a lot of what's in this is describing what they remember and happened to them. And I'd have to go along with the fact that why would all these other ones be messed with and I wasn't? So
can I answer that, Bill?
Of course.
So here's where I and I'm just taking this from chapter 9. Jack Barrett and Sergeant B were treated more like prototypes than they were witnesses or victims. They, I guess, got the idea or came to the conclusion, I would say is a better word, that these two gentlemen were becoming prototypes of what they wanted to do or need or how they wanted to. Am I close on that, John?
Well, yeah. I mean, okay. Here's the thing that's real. That you can verify. MK Ultra took place in the States. It didn't get shut down completely. They claimed they destroyed a lot of documents. They refused to hand them over to Congress. And then what they ended up doing was moving the program overseas. So they were still working on MK Ultra, and all you have to do is look that program up and see what was going on. They were doing stuff at Montauk Island. That's all been blown up and combobulated and
Camp Hero Montauk Project, yeah.
But there was stuff going on right off the coast, right there. What's interesting is, and I don't want to drag this person's name in other than I'll say LW, and you know who that is. And Cookie, you know who that is. They both lived within the spectrum of Montauk Island. And Cookie's father worked on that project. So that very well could be both of them ended up in England because of what was going on with MK Ultra, and it all got transferred over there. That's real. That's not conspiracy.
Time out. I gotta, because that's an interesting. Something I've never put that together until you just brought that up.
Right.
Because supposedly they were messing on at Camp Hero because Chris Garitano made the Montauk Chronicles film, the documentary. And I spoke to him at length on it with the people that were involved in the documentary, the people that supposedly were there when they were messing with this. But it had to do with using subjects, children specifically, and using like this remote viewing and also trying to connect into some other dimension. Because the story, because I've been going to Montauk all my life. I grew up. My parents used to take me there every year. And the story was that it released some type of, I'm just going to say it, a creature. It was like the Montauk Monster. Whatever they were doing there, it actually tapped into another dimension and something came through it. Now, I don't know if anything, and I wanted to get your take on this, if anything that was going on at Montauk and the experiments that were going on there, because there's connection. Both of you, there's connections to what was going on Long Island. This connects to German scientists. This goes really deep.
Well, it does, and there's two things that happened from it. The equipment that was there was outside the back gate at Woodbridge. The same very equipment was being utilized by over in England. But
so you're saying there is a connection then.
Yeah, but I want to read you this, and you guys can talk about this for a minute. So go ahead and give me a second to read something that I found. It was very interesting. It got put on my page today. Oh, and also Hunter Green was identified by people that he was there involved at Rendlesham. And Hunter Green, the real guy, was actually, believe this or not, was actually part of MK Ultra.
That actually surprised me. Yeah.
He was part of MK Ultra. So he was right below the lead scientist with the CIA. Okay. Now this is what got sent to me today. He said, Chapter 9 was great. I really liked the song. I think subtitles would work, remembering Rendlesham. Did you ever meet Christopher Hunter Green? I have several times. I have to say those Dr. Greens really got around from Rendlesham to Montauk Project to Langley to Los Alamos. Dr. Greens were also all over the place. Dr. Green was a popular handle for the CIA spook doctors. Weird, some had German accents, others didn't. So, yeah, it's all, yes, I am tying in some of this to why we were done. Now, from what I was told about MK Ultra, it was I'd heard the stories about stuff being brought in and stuff. They were working on a project to figure out how to plant false memories in people, how to keep people from being interrogated, and how to draw stuff out of people.
Oh my
That
God.
was part of what MK Ultra was, so they could use that in interrogation on, other, like, whatever, enemy soldiers, spies or whatever. They were also working on if they were able to erase stuff, like if you got captured, there could be a trigger word and you wouldn't remember anything. So you wouldn't just be lying, you would be telling the truth. I have no memory anymore. So they're working on all that stuff. And then if you remember the Manchurian Candidate, that was real too. And they were working on maybe being able to put triggers in people and they could activate them later to do certain things. Like, let's say you could be trained and not know what you were going to do, and you could be somewhere and get activated and go pull off an assassination or anything. That was all real. That's not made up stuff. That was all the stuff they were working on in the 70s and 80s. And at first they were using more drugs and different things like that. And then when they started to understand the frequency stuff, that's when they started getting heavy into the frequencies and stuff.
Quickly, Chris, before you comment on what John just said, Benno asked an interesting question in chat. Do you think they use phones now to brainwash, influence our thoughts? They can reach so many. Do you think that could be a source through frequency or some type of manipulation using our phones or any other devices like that?
I do know back years ago, they tried to do that with television to influence thought. It was the commercial companies.
Subliminal. Yes.
They'd have some little message that would flash and it'd say drink Coca-Cola or buy Wheaties or something of that nature. And then when you went to the store, you subconsciously pick up a 6-pack of Coke or thing. But so it is possible that, messages could be sent that way through phone, text.
There's a couple other things. Who was the guy that was out in the middle of nowhere? I'm having a senior moment. The guy that killed people and he holed up and he wrote a manifesto. What was the guy?
Ted Bundy?
Yeah. He had this manifesto, somebody said today, included how this would all come to light down the years, where people would be controlled by technology. But people are aware, it didn't start with TV, it started with the radio. Started with, there was a song Marconi wrote, the Mamba, listen to the radio. Don't you remember, we built this city on rock and roll. Marconi is the science, the company, the defense contractor that was right outside the back gate that was working on EM frequencies and manipulation that could affect people and could be used as weapons. And that song was written, and there was music supposedly had messages in it too. So this has been going on for a while, and we talked about this maybe a month ago. If you go online and look at the series that a guy did for the DOD, who was involved with Rendlesham Investigate in the first place, left and went to work for the Office of DNI and with Andy Marshall, he did a 3-part series called The Soft Wars. And in it, the DOD admits through him that they are able to do that. It's called the Soft War. They're able to manipulate people through that way.
See, this is where I was just going with this, because Chris, you brought this up and it made me think, what if this frequency, this resonance that we're discussing surrounding the green veil can be activated globally just by the use of our own satellite system to transmit it globally to everyone? I mean,
it would tie into the 5G towers.
Exactly. So
Green told me that. Green told me that.
Really?
Green told me that. He actually told me that's what's going to take place.
Yeah, but why would you need 5G towers if it's
because they have to get to the frequency.
Transmitting you and Sergeant B and others, it didn't use towers then. It wasn't.
No. We're talking about a parallel thing. The question was, were they working on technology? What were they trying to do to weaponize it? They were working on this stuff, and they found a way to start to utilize it, which is separate from what we walked into and what we created. So it's a combination of both things. And the satellites are never talked about. And even today, most of the time, people completely forget what's flying over above us and completely forgetting that quantum satellites exist now. Quantum computing exists. Satellites are up above us and the effects that they can do. And the 5G towers would actually modulate stuff out into each area. So you could isolate different areas in a city and actually create effects and cause people to do things. To include activate people if they were actually brought in and actually put something in them for a trigger
All right,
mechanism.
Go ahead, Chris, because I gotta follow up. Go ahead.
No, go ahead, John.
I was gonna say, so is it possible that they can implant a trigger that we're not even aware that it is a trigger on anything? I'm freaking out when I think about this. If there's something that they put out even in the public, like you said, if it's a song or something that everybody has access to, and that is actually affecting every person that has access to that.
Can I take it another step further?
Please
Why do you think they did the genetic studies? Every different genetics has a different trigger mechanism. So they would study the genetics, and that way they could actually do these frequencies to trigger different people to react differently to different things. Because that's one of the things that goes on. And by the way, I'll answer your question real fast. Marconi's called BAH Systems now. It's in England. So anyway, getting back to it, they could actually trigger frequencies and stuff to trigger different people based off their genetics and everything else and what would trigger them. Now, here's where the problem comes, which I got directly from this guy that worked inside government. Every person, even within the genetics, may act a little differently to a trigger mechanism. So that is what they're working on, and that is what's taking place. People don't understand when people do things that just don't add up. There's a very good possibility they have taken this to the level where they can start affecting things. And what's some of the things that went on in the hearings? They're talking about the Havana syndrome. Okay. Well, how does that relate to UAPs? Well, it relates to frequencies, and it relates to how the actual frequencies can be utilized in different ways, weaponization-wise. And everything that they're doing is continuing to advance. So does that tie directly into the main part about Jack and Sergeant B? Not totally, and it does in a different way. But you say, what were they working on at the time, and what did they discover? What was the first thing they wanted to do? They were expanding the weaponization program based on frequencies.
Oh my gosh, Chris, I gotta, because Benno made another great comment in there. Frequencies plus biological manipulation through viruses, because viruses, and the antibodies used, whatever. I don't want to get into that whole conversation, but if everybody has a certain virus, it's already been embedded, and doesn't that change?
Or that would come from nanotechnology, because your nanotechnology could give off a frequency. So let's say you're using a virus or antivirus, or even something to counteract the virus, but it's a nanotechnology that very well could give off frequencies in the body. They're starting to discover that frequencies can either hurt the body, which John talked about with the Havana syndrome, because that's all frequencies. The Russians actually invented that back in 1952 when they attacked an American embassy with frequencies, and one of the ambassadors actually, I think he had brain injury from it and stuff. But then they're finding that frequencies can now start to heal, and they're working on different frequencies that may be able to cure certain type of things. Like, for instance, you can buy an infrared blanket, has that infrared light and stuff, and it gives off a laser frequency. A laser is a frequency, gives off a laser frequency, and it stimulates cells in your body to recover. And that's a proven technology now, that before people would just say, that's garbage, but it's not. I have one. It works.
The reason I say that is what John just mentioned about changing. A person has different genetics. What if something is put into our bodies? Doesn't have to be nanotechnology, but something that can alter our genetics, which affects our DNA, which can thus activate it on a certain point when they want it activated. In other words, we may be thinking on nanotechnology, but this could be something totally different on a totally different level.
Well, I think you're right on the money, Bill, because the Chinese have been experimenting to alter DNA on viruses that would kill only certain people. That's a proven fact. So you
Yeah.
can actually alter somebody's DNA,
Yep.
introduce a virus that your DNA, your ability, your immune system
You
would
do
not.
realize, Chris, that what happened with COVID was that. And what's interesting is,
But they can be more specific now.
no, they were, but this is the thing that was missed with COVID. Okay, the Chinese said we did it, we created it. Okay, now the things that add up that are factual is we were doing these gain of function things around the world outside the United States. Okay, one of the places they were doing it was in China. Right before COVID hit, Langley was over there, and they were doing something over there. Then after they left, COVID broke out in China. We created a vaccine really quick, which was crazy.
Yes.
That vaccine was already there on the drawing board before COVID hit us, and then they immediately got it into place, which is crazy. But the Chinese did not create the vaccine, nor did they lock everybody up for almost a year. They locked everybody up from that vaccine. So my assumption was that vaccine was created to cull the Chinese people. And because why didn't they create their own vaccine? Why did they lock everybody up? They shut everything down for over a year.
I think that they had the ability to, well, the vaccine didn't really work that well, but I think the delivery system, which is that new technology, mRNA delivery system for the vaccine to alter your genetics, was the thing that they were worried about. Now, the guy that actually worked on that, invented it, said it wasn't perfected, but they went ahead with it anyways.
No, but they already had a vaccine. Normally, when something that you're not even aware of exists and it happens, it takes 5 years to get the vaccine into place. Trump was already talking about the vaccine already on the drawing board and being done in April.
Right.
So
doesn't it take 5 years, I think, necessarily to get FDA approval?
Well, you have to get the studies. They do.
Yeah, but it takes 2 to 3 years just to get it done. Then they do the studies. Then they put it out, and it takes 5 years.
The reason we're speaking about this, anyone who may be watching or listening, it's about what we were saying before about embedding something in someone to set off a trigger. Because if you go back into the past chapters, there's a reference to this where Sergeant B, based on the frequencies that were picked up previously in the first instance, they were able to re-tap into where Jack was inside this bubble to try to get him out again. But they got it because also Sergeant B was part of this, so they were able to tap into him to gain that knowledge. So this could be like the baseboard, the foundation of where all this stuff emanates from.
Right.
Do you know what I mean?
Right. But the problem what I won't say it's a problem. The benefit that they saw was, even though the bubble collapsed, the frequency still maintained.
It maintained within Barrett and B, yes.
Right.
And
that's
there's
why
something coming. There's something coming in the next couple chapters that's going to say it's coming in to reactivate everything. The activation is beginning now in 9. And what you didn't talk about was they pulled us in and they were training us how to control it when the activation happens.
So I just want to pivot back to the Montauk project for a second, because the one thing that kind of I was thinking about this before. So Montauk was a remote viewing, time manipulation, time suspension program.
And
And-
also, yes, remote viewing, but under extreme conditions.
Right. They were using drugs, possibly MK
And
Ultra,
children.
LSD, in
Allegedly.
order to enhance consciousness. Now, because what they were trying to do was weaponize remote viewing, where you can actually not only see things from far away, but you can manipulate people, manipulate items.
No, it's called remote. It's called remote manipulation, and
Right.
they can do it.
And
I got shown how they do it.
And I got to tell you, there's actually became a program. There's a television program on all this. It's called the Institute. And if you look, they took it right out of the playbook of Montauk. If Montauk is true, where they were taking children, enhancing their abilities, because they found that children have a heightened ability better than adults.
Stranger Things on Netflix. That a lot of that storyline comes from Montauk, believe it or not, and
Right.
they have referenced that.
But
So-
it's not just children.
No,
It's
no, no. I know.
Right.
Specific genetic things. Now,
Right.
what they
There
were
were
also,
unique
Chris,
children
working
that
on,
they took.
create-
Right.
they were wanting to bring certain genetics together to create these children. That's exactly what they were trying to figure out, how to actually have children created from the beginning and bring them into the world.
So basically, Jack Barrett and Sergeant B, they were the prototypes to be able to study them, use them, and be able to create other Jack Barretts and other Sergeant Bs if possible.
And I would even say control them by removing memories where they wouldn't even know what the heck was going on. They were getting recall at times, but it was like they were trying to have complete control.
But
And
they were also getting flashes from the future.
Right. But again, it was about containing and controlling the situation of these two individuals. And they didn't count on them getting their memories back, I'm assuming, and having that recall process. And that added probably more complications. But then again, they're probably monitoring 24/7 everything they do from that point on anyway, as an observation, because like you said, they're assets. To them,
Right.
they're just assets. They're part of the bigger picture for them, because they know they are the bridge to this whole thing.
Well, I could tell you this, in this chapter, the training they were doing with us is real. What I said they were doing to us is what they came and visited me for and wanted me to start doing this for real. Hunter Green visited me directly where I lived and brought me all kinds of stuff that you can't find online. And he brought it to me and he laid out exactly the program I needed to do and what they wanted me to do.
Why would he come to you to tell you this?
Because it wasn't going to it wasn't able to be recorded. It wasn't put on the internet or anything else. He brought me stuff that he wanted me to work on and look into. And he verbally told me this, completely outside of social media or anything else. So other than a couple things that I've got, I still have. And he also gave me a formula, which is very interesting. It has to do with quantum. I do have that. And the interesting thing is that he had plausible deniability from almost everything, other than a couple emails saying he was coming and the information he gave me and what they wanted me to do.
So
and then on top of it, they brought me down to Austin and they gave me a program. They showed me exactly how to do remote viewing and remote influence.
So is he giving you what you need to move forward if you were subpoenaed, because it's not going to happen voluntary, I'm assuming, to be called into a hearing and present all of this? It's like he's playing it cool in the background. I have, like you said, plausible deniability. I don't know what's going, but yet he's providing you insight and kind of giving you the pieces.
Well, no, they wanted me to start training. They actually The problem with the whole scope was the stuff that they wanted me to do. You can't go down to your yoga shop. You can't go do this. I'd have to go over to the monks because there's no one that's trained on this stuff. When I did a search on who to turn to get this training, there was no one there other than the Buddha monks. And the yoga stuff that they wanted me to do, which I mentioned in this piece, there was only a couple in the whole world that had the training on how to do it. It was a combination of tuning your body both mentally and physically to be prepared for something. And he came and visited me and gave me this stuff to work on. So
how long ago was that, John?
Monroe Institute?
The Monroe Institute has some of that stuff in there. And a person I turned to said I needed to go to them. But the Monroe Institute ties right back to these same guys. Everything that's out there is all tied back into this group. These people that were involved in all this stuff.
So, John, the other question I have for you is that in the chapter 9, they really start hinting about the frequencies or what's coming from the earth. Because, I mean, as you watch the chapter, you see that they're creating big holes. They have equipment out, penetrating the ground in order to catch what frequencies, what's coming from the earth. Can you speak a little bit about that?
For real, there's something buried in the burial grounds in England.
But is that it? But is that the only location? I'm guessing
there's supposedly other places, yes. You could say technically Skinwalker, Bradshaw Ranch, Marley Woods, and then there's a place down that are main things that have been talked about. There's a place down Marfa, Texas is another place.
Okay, do they give off the same frequency?
I haven't studied that. I'm not really sure if they're different entities, if they're different frequencies. The other factor is where's the place up? Where is it where Trump wants to take over? Up the
Oregon?
No, it's up Greenland.
Greenland.
The Henlik, what is it called? There's an area where they had all these plasmas and everything around it. It's called, begins with an H. I can't remember what it's called. They've done books on it. Scientists have gone up there and studied these plasmas and these lights. It's called something lights. The Texas ones are the Marfa lights. There's another one up there where Trump talked about wanting to take over.
Is that where they have HARP? Near HARP?
No, HARP's in Alaska.
Okay.
But it's over. I think it's in Greenland. Maybe one of the listeners can tell us where that is. But it's Helsinki or something. I can't remember. There's a place there that a bunch of researchers have gone there too. That there is unexplained activity there that the scientists have studied and everything.
So I think Benno in the chat, I would just want to tell him, Benno, I think that's really accurate where you say buried artifacts. Now, if they give off the same frequency at the same time and stuff, it tells me that a particular species or particular group of people, whoever may be, put those there for a specific reason. I mean, if they coordinate with each other, they have the same frequency, that's not a coincidence. That's something that, boy, I'd like to find out, because then that's exactly.
It goes deeper than that, Chris. The area of Rendlesham has an ancient civilization.
Right.
Now, here's the thing. If you Google Rendlesham Forest, in the book title, it says Home of the Shield. Just read what that says, what the Home of the Shield means and what that all means. And this is real. That there is an ancient civilization that was there, and there really is something buried underground.
The question, though, John, is all the other places, do they have the same exact thing buried under the ground?
I've been to Bradshaw, and I've had weird stuff happen, and I've been to Skinwalker and seen weird stuff happen when I showed up. So I have no idea what's buried there, and I have no idea exactly what's going on, other than these are confirmed areas where this stuff is taking effect.
All right, I got to ask this question. It's hypothetical. is it possible that whatever we're dealing with in our future, distant future, whatever the time frame is, has been going back in time and putting these things in place so they can go jump in anytime they want to at any time period and just go through that whole timeline to what they're at right now, like what happened with you. If this has been going on for thousands of years, that means they've had the capacity to jump back into time and move throughout time, throughout ancient history, right? Am I getting that right?
Well, I'm sorry. Go ahead, Chris.
No,
Chris?
no, I was just going to, I'm just thinking that these could possibly be landmarkers buried there. Let's just say that they're from an ancient civilization, possibly left Earth years ago. They used these as landmarkers to.
Well, what makes you think they left Earth? What makes you? This is where ufology. This is where the argument comes in ufology. Whatever we're dealing with would completely and totally destroy our concept of the way we've been taught religion. Now, what I was told by people inside government was substitute God for alien. The 10 Commandments for a governor, not the way the 10 Commandments were presented, but the 10 Commandments were just a government way the government should actually govern. And the fact of the matter is, this came from people that I never thought would say this. And the ultimate thing is, if we did have an ancient civilization come here, which is what have they said about 3D Atlas? It's before we actually existed. It's coming from interstellar space, and they think it was pre-existing our own solar system. So if they came here when the solar system became, and then seeded this planet, and whatever happened to them afterwards, I have no idea, then maybe they left something underground or something there. And now some of the speculation coming from 3D Atlas is it's coming back to actually activate what was left behind before. And that's where I'm telling you, this is where it's going in this Behind the Green Veil.
As wild,
I wrote this before any of this came out in June and July.
As wild as this sounds, there are science fiction movies where even in some adaptations of War of the Worlds, these machines are already here and then they're activated and they just rise up from underground. I'm just saying that as a reference, because what Benno said too, this new alien Earth has to do with children. And science fiction sometimes mixes in obviously truth in what they put in their TV programs or movies or whatever else. So this is kind of an odd coincidence how things are coming.
Well, I cannot think of it. It's just came out on Amazon 2 years ago, or 3 years, 2 to 3 years ago. It was a movie, and the future was coming back to the present to recruit people to go fight a war in the future because the aliens had invaded. But the concept of it was they had to come back to take people that weren't alive, that would die because of the time parallels. But the interesting part was, a long time ago, an alien craft crashed into the ice in the Antarctic. And as it melted, the aliens became alive, and that's how they were winning the war in the future. And what they did is they figured it out and it went back to the past, and they destroyed the aliens while they were still in the ice, so the future stabilized and returned to normal. That just came out 2 or 3 years ago, and it's on Amazon. I think Chris Pratt, if I remember, Chris Pratt's in that movie, is the guy that goes and destroys the aliens that was killing them in the future in the pack.
I got a question for both of you then. And I really want to hear your response to this. What if, like we were mentioning, there are these artifacts throughout the globe on different continents, okay? What if everybody's theory about the missing link the Anunnaki came and altered primitive humans. What if they did it, whoever they are or whatever it is, they went back in time and did it themselves and altered our DNA, our genetic makeup to make that transformation? Because remember, John, you've made reference, this could be the new evolutionary stage of humankind. So, you know what I mean? Involved in
I can tell you this is factual based on what I was told. Nolan and those guys were looking back to the time of Christ and before Christ for bloodlines. So what they were doing was people that had these UAP experiences, they were looking for markers from back before even Christ. They were looking for DNA markers from back to that time frame. So you tell me, what are they looking for? They were looking at the brain to understand how our brains allegedly could interact with this phenomenon. That's a fact. Now, whether it was a lie is a different story, but they were looking at genetic backgrounds, DNA backgrounds, and the mind itself on how the interactions with the UAPs took place.
Are they concerned that our brains cannot handle the new evolutionary stage if something were to occur where it is activated?
They never really said they would. That's the frustration I had with them. When you would ask them a question, they wouldn't give you an answer on that stuff.
We know the human brain can't sustain certain frequencies, that it damages the human brain. There's a lot of people who've had encounters, especially pilots, who have damaged brains, white spots on the brain, and they're saying it's caused by a frequency. Now, remember, most communications with an alien is done telepathically, or whatever they are, interdimensional, whatever. It's a telepathic frequency.
That is part of their study. They were looking at that because
Right.
DARPA. This is real again. DARPA is on the verge of being able to communicate telepathically.
But
they're on the verge of finding a way to do that. But they're going to have to modulate the brain to do it. The brain hasn't been trained. You and I can't do it, but they can put a modulation in the brain to make the brain activate to be able to do that. Yeah.
But with AI tapping into it, a non-human intelligent aspect into the consciousness, we may be at that stage where that is possible.
No, it's not. We are.
Oh, we are.
They've already said that. These are declassified documents that DARPA's admitted to.
If we can put a microchip in a person's brain, let's say a microchip, with AI, the AI actually would pick up the frequency, interpret it into words, and then transmit that into your brain as a language.
It's quantum, though.
Yeah,
quantum is the key to all this.
I'm just saying that with a chip, if you have a chip to chip, you could telepathically send a frequency, transmit a language, or transmit a sentence.
Anything.
To another person in a chip.
Yeah.
AI converts that into a thought pattern or words.
Well, here's
where
they're trying to jump that replug that. They're trying to make it so they find a way to activate the brain so they don't have to put the chip in there. That's what they're working on right now. Now, did you catch what Zelensky said to the UN on Friday or Thursday? He said we are at the cuspices of drones being completely controlling themselves. AI is on the cuspices of these drones they don't need any more human interaction.
Scary even to think about.
No, but he said something he shouldn't have, but he did. Because NATO immediately came back and said he's lost his mind. But in reality, these drones now are self-teaching themselves and are reacting on their own.
Gosh. All right, time out. What if they're going to use this new stage in this development of what you guys just discussed to tap into? In other words, John, you're one subject. You're obviously, we're going to find out more about Jack Barrett's son's involvement coming up in episodes. But what if they're looking for that next level to put into that situation and that time distortion? Because now it has that AI aspect of it all. to take it to even another level in trying to deal with what's inside and deal with whatever NHI could be involved with that freak resonance in that time distortion. Do you know what I mean? Like to maybe try to communicate with it more, or to try to do something with it because of the AI. Do you understand what I'm saying?
Well, I don't know. Say, I'll tell you what I think is going on. But Chris, if you got something to say, go ahead.
Go ahead,
No,
Chris.
go ahead.
I think personally, based on everything I've been exposed to, what memories I have from what happened to us, that something's, and that's why I wrote this book. And I didn't really, I'll be straightforward with people. I didn't really think it was going to happen this year. This was written to get people to start thinking differently, understanding our capabilities and what may be going to happen in the future. And maybe this atlas isn't what it could be. But if it is, then it's happening now. But ultimately, people are going to get activated. Bloodlines and people that have certain things from the ancient past are going to be triggered by whatever comes. And what's going to happen is the global elites that control everything will lose control. They will no longer be able to manipulate most people or a certain group of people. And that will become a threat to their control and power. To
And
include,
your theory, this is all connected to 3i Atlas, right?
it could be. It could be. It's just shocking. I'm saying this. I didn't write this because I thought it was happening as it is. But you saw that clip I sent you that scientist was talking about at the 15-minute mark. He described exactly what's happening with 3i Atlas. And he describes the plasma and the effects on consciousness, right?
Mm-hmm.
And the potential communications. So imagine if you're an elite group of people that are manipulating. And I say this as no disrespect to Christianity, but in general, the country's now getting pushed towards Christian nationalism. And that was used as control back. You just have to go back a couple hundred years, and they were burning people at the cross as witches and doing all this stuff. So Christianity has been manipulated by the powers to be before all this other stuff started happening. So if you lose control of a chunk of people or a general group of a populace, then you lose control over everything. So if in fact something's coming this way to activate people to ascend to a different level, what would they be trying to do right now? Everything in their power would be to stop that from happening.
Hey, Bill, don't we have a piece on that 3i Atlas that you have made before?
Which
video, audio piece?
No, you know what I'm going to do while you guys, because we only have a few minutes left, but John showed us that video off air. I'm going to try to grab it, and I'm going to try to play the audio off of it, because I don't know if you'll be able to hear it through here.
Is it
which I doubt. So what I'm going to do is try to quickly download this so we can air that segment, which is really interesting, because he talks about plasma and does it have consciousness?
Yeah,
plasma.
And I think that what John is saying throughout this book with Jack Barrett and stuff, I think we're going to see, this is just my humble opinion, consciousness play a bigger role than what we're thinking.
Yeah, but Bino just said revolution, yes? Well, we've been told that's what's going to happen based on an interpretation that we were given, but they've hidden different parts of the Bible from us. Some of it they claim is sitting under the Vatican, and they won't discuss other parts of it and what we're being fed, which ticks off the clergy, but they only can teach what they've been told to teach. Now, the bottom line is everything we're being taught about religion factual either? Why did they hide Enoch? Why have they hid other things in Genesis and everything else? So, and you get the clergy where a scientist looked into Genesis and he wrote a book on it trying to discredit it. And he said, well, wait a minute. It wasn't God up there on his chariot slapping down. It was aliens coming in on their ship now, this was a scientist that didn't believe either, and he said his only conclusion based on the studies that he did was it could have been some kind of aliens coming from somewhere else, way back during the time of the Bible itself. And I know for a fact what these guys were studying was back in that time frame and back even farther from that. They were looking for DNA markers from that time frame. So why is all that?
All right, but here's the one thing that always gets me is that when the people I've ever interviewed, and I've interviewed a lot of people who claim to have alien encounter, has never, at least I have not had anybody say they look exactly like us. Even the Nordics are much taller than us, very white skin. You know, I mean,
Even in the Bible, Chris, it
What?
made in our image. I mean, there's a lot of references in many religious texts as well.
I'm not saying that's not true. I'm just saying to you that the people who've been encountering aliens stuff have normally said they're the grays, they're the reptoids, they're draconians. I mean, there's all these different species. I have and I've done 100 people who said the people came down and they look just like us. It just hasn't happened, Bill. I'm not saying that it's not true.
Yeah, and what are most of the military encounters? They're not having anything to do with ships or biological beings. They're these lights. What was Maelstrom? Maelstrom, as much as he don't want to admit it, was not alien craft or beings.
Well,
It
I
was
think that was
lights.
us, wasn't it, John?
What?
Wasn't that more us testing equipment?
Well, that's what I've come to the conclusion based on the documents that I've uncovered. But it still was a plasma type of object, which if you go to Condyne says it's real, it's alive, and it's able to do things that nobody else can do. And if Bill finds his piece, this guy describes a little bit about what this craft is doing as it comes towards us. 3D Atlas comes towards us. But these plasmas are real. They're intelligent. They're under intelligent control. They're able to do things that nothing that we have do. But if you could take that plasma and put it around a craft, that will actually cause the craft to be able to do things that they couldn't normally do in normal space and time. So it's a type of time dilation bubble, which allows it to do things and manipulate space and time, which our government just admitted we're capable of doing.
Sure.
We're able to do all that, which goes back to the plasma itself. Okay, so you fast forward to all this stuff, and you've got an intelligence out there that they know about, they studied, it's in different areas of the world. It's able to do different things. And guess what else it can do? And it's in Condyne. And it's what they worked on in our own government through the Canadian government. They did what was called the God's helmet. You've heard of that, right, Chris?
Yeah, sure.
They manipulated the mind in people through frequencies, and everybody, or 90% of the people, came back and said they thought they saw God.
Yeah, I mean, they can manipulate neurotransmitters. They can make you hallucinate, everything. That's all stuff.
Yeah. So just because somebody said they had an encounter and they saw something, what if whatever they were encountering, they manipulated their mind to believe what they wanted it to believe, or their mind, just what they said, came back home to mama.
Exactly. But what I'm saying to you is that the encounters, 90% of the encounters, 95% of the encounters, whether it's being manipulated or not, is not something that looks like us. Now, I'm not saying there isn't species that look like us. I truly believe that. It's just that the majority of the investigations that I have done, they're normally grays, reptilian, insectoid, or Nordics. Nordics come the most closest. Not to say that there isn't, but you don't get a majority. You don't get a lot of people saying they look just like us.
Okay, but Chris, think about Contact, the movie Contact. Think about the scene where she met her father. And what did he say to her? I made it look like that. So what I'm saying is people saw different things. I get your point, but they probably didn't really see a Nordic. They probably didn't really see a reptilian. They probably didn't really see that. That's what they were made to believe to see, or their mind convinced them is what
very
they saw.
well possibility. But if they wanted to, just like the movie Contact, wouldn't it have been easier to come back as your father to look human as opposed to a insectoid or a gray? I mean,
But you'd have to
totally
understand,
your
Chris,
concept.
you don't know if they're doing it or that's what the mind has simulated it as.
I understand what both of you are saying, but what if we're dealing with more than one thing? I mean, we could be dealing with multiple things going on at once. Interdimensional travel, where we're dealing with all these different types of species where they're able to come here through the manipulation of time and space. And what we're dealing with this Atlas possibility could be something totally different than everything else that people are experiencing. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah,
I'm
well,
saying-
Bill, I'm not saying you or Chris are wrong, but I can tell you this. Two people that I talked to, one of them was Edgar Mitchell, and Edgar Mitchell told me Condine's the real deal, and that's what we're dealing with. He told me that before he died. Unfortunately, he's gone. So and unfortunately, the guy that recorded the conversation and was involved with it is passed too. But that's what he told me. He said, this is the majority of what we're dealing with. And the fact is that another person told me the same thing. Now, it is a question of how they travel, but what did Bigelow say? Bigelow, who has had the most money funded to his company, has done the deepest digs and studies, say they're already here.
Sure. And there's people who say Avi Loeb is one of them. Some of the others say they're walking among us.
Yeah. That doesn't mean they're walking. They're just here existing that we can't see unless they want us to see it.
So here's the other thing that
Did you get the piece real fast, Bill?
I did. It's going to be audio only, and I uploaded it. I don't know if this is going to work, folks.
Let's do it because we're running out of time.
Yeah, let's see if I can do it at the 14-minute mark. And I want to give credit to Stefan Burns. Check out his YouTube channel. He's been doing a lot of the 3i Atlas coverage. So Stefan, Stefan Burns. This is where this audio clip is coming from. And I'm going to start it at the 14-minute mark or so, if I can. This is something new I'm going to try as a producer. But
geophysicist Stefan Burns here. 3i
and
Atlas.
I don't know if it's going to work, and I can skip it. I don't think I can skip through it.
In July of.
All right, I'm going to try it another way. You guys did hear that, though, right?
Yeah, we heard it.
All right, I'm going to try another way because that's playing it from the beginning of the clip. But I can try doing it this way. I need folks that are in chat to let me know if you can hear this. This, like I said, this is something I'm trying new during a live stream.
Hey everyone, geophysicist.
It is live, folks. So
seeing all the way latest images of 3 at the very end. Go in what we've learned from all these other.
All right, can you guys hear that?
Yes.
Oh, yeah.
All right, I need to know if the audience, if anybody's in chat, can you hear that audio I was just playing? Because this is a very interesting little piece. And I'm going to play it again. Just folks that are in chat, please let me know.
Measurements and, that knowledge information and look at it a little bit through that lens. But I think it would be best, just as a layperson and someone who thinks about these things, to really just look at this observationally and not put strict definitions on what this is, because we don't know what it is. We don't know where it came from. Is it a remnant of like an exploded planet? Is it actually a comet from another system that was flung out? Like, how is its journey through interstellar space change it? All the different clouds of gas and dust that exist in these bubbles, that has an effect on our sun. We know that in the size of the heliosphere. Well, if this thing's been traveling through interstellar space for, let's say, 1 billion years, how has that affected 3i Atlas, its elemental and molecular composition, its structure, its evolution? These are all unknowns. So it's displaying consistently across multiple things, anomalous activity and behavior, doing this weird super close flyby of Mars and then also Jupiter next year, right along the ecliptic plane, only 5 degrees off in that inclination. It's just super, super odd. And that is why some people believe it's an alien craft. Other people just stick to the fact that it's a comet. I don't know what it is. I do think that we can definitely look at this from a plasma perspective, because some of that gas will ionize and become plasma just because of solar radiation and the solar wind effect. And there will be this recombination rate, but some of it will stay ionized, and it's going to increasingly ionize as it gets closer and closer to the sun. And then dust particles, they pick up these ions and they become charged. So now you have a complex dusty plasma, which in the lab and also observationally behaves in very strange, unusual ways, in many ways are reminiscent of life itself. So you could also start to think of this from a consciousness perspective. What is the consciousness of this interstellar object?
Right there. What is the consciousness of this interstellar
Yeah,
object?
and that's what we've been talking about. Consciousness.
Exactly.
That's exactly what this whole series is about.
Consciousness.
Consciousness, the effects, and how our consciousness is being inhibited and being destroyed. And there's a time where we're at the point now where we have to either take back control of what's being taken from us, or we're not going to survive.
This is going to get very interesting. I think, what is it? Next week, John and Chris?
October 3rd is when it passes Mars. And that's when they've got two spacecraft out there that are going to get a close look at it.
I think the Mars Observer. I forget the names of the.
One's European and one's American.
Yeah. Wow. So, folks, stay tuned.
Oh, this is going to be interesting.
It's going to get really interesting. So, guys, we've got to wrap it up. We've gone over a little bit, but that's fine because this was fascinating, this discussion tonight. And I want to thank all those that have been tuning in, whether you're watching here on the video side or the listening on the audio side. We will be back next week again for another live show. Don't forget, coming up on Thursday, Chapter 10, The Echo Reawakens. And I know I say this every week, but it's getting more intense as we go forward. And John, tell us give us something.
I'll give you this, okay? That piece, Keith, which you're going to give him credit here in a second.
Yes.
Keith does a lot of the work putting this together. So he's now was working on 11. He sent me this piece that he found. So I watched it and I said, uh-oh. And I went to 12 and I looked at it and I said, wow. So I sent him 12 and I said, look at this real fast. And he came back and goes, holy shit. He goes, this is unreal. What this guy just said and where this is going in this series. He said, you can't make this up. He said, I don't know what to make of it and I don't know what to do next. And that's exactly what he said when he's finishing 11 and then but he read 12. And I did this, folks, before any of this started being talked about publicly. I did this in April and May.
And don't forget, he was going in a certain direction, and then something happened where he decided to go into a whole.
Well, see, I thought 12 is where I changed it, but I mean, I've had stuff going on health-wise and stuff, but it's actually 11 because that's what started all the exchange, because there was something in 11 that didn't have about the rest of it, and I was like, oh, that was from before. So I actually changed it starting in 11 and all the way through 22. But 12, just 11, the next three are going to be really good, but 11 and 12 are going to be like, what the F? That's all I can tell you.
There you go.
And some of the questions, Chris, that you've been asking are going to be explained thoroughly in these chapters coming up.
Wonderful.
Finally. Anyway,
all right.
Have a great night. Thank you for tuning in, whether you're listening on the radio side and, of course, those in the chat. And any final thoughts, gentlemen, before we wrap it up? Chris?
I'm just waiting to see the next chapter.
Well, here's the other thing that I've been told this, and maybe we can get some people to look into this going forward till next week. Some of these areas are becoming active now. There's some activity happening in some of these locations that have been pretty dormant for a few years. There's more lights and more activity. And allegedly, and I just say this because with tongue in cheek, because I'm hearing this from certain people that may be just doing it for clickbaits. Some people are starting to feel effects that they haven't felt before. There are people out there that are starting to feel differently than they've ever felt before. So again, I don't have confirmed verification on either one of these, but if there is really going on, I would like to not just hear it. I would like to see some kind of evidence, maybe next week or going forward.
All right, folks, we're out of here. Have a great night to all those that are watching and listening. We'll see you all next week live. Don't forget, Thursday, 5:30 p.m. Eastern, Chapter 10, The Echo Reawakens. So for John Burrows, Christopher Perno, and myself, all of you, have a great rest of your weekend, and we shall see you next week live.